Hey everyone, I am here with Matty Lansdown from Down Under. Welcome to the show, Matty.
Hey Danny, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. We are just discussing how it's super sunny and hot here and daytime, and now it's nighttime where you are, which is always a bit weird.
It is. And Matty is in a business mastermind with me, and we chat all the time. And he's got an amazing podcast, How to Not Get Sick and Die, right?
Yeah, totally. And yeah, I'm so grateful for that we've connected through that mastermind this year. It's been so good, like just getting to know you and yeah, hanging out and throwing ideas around.
For sure. And I know a lot of what Matty does in his business and how who he helps and just the quality of person he is. And it's been so lovely getting to know you. I'm so excited for now my podcast listeners to get to know you as well. So why don't you share? I know that you have a really interesting kind of origin story, how you got to this world of holistic health. And so I would love if you could share with us all the details you want. And all the, exposing secrets you need to do that you're allowed to. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, totally. So I guess most people sort of end up in this holistic health world, usually for two reasons. Either they grew up with a mum or a grandmother or somebody in the family as a naturopath or a natural health professional, or the Western medical world let them down and they ended up having to find their way to alternative solutions that they may once have not believed to be real or to be available, or that it was all hippie nonsense, And so I grew up with my mum as a nurse. So I had kind of the opposite thing. I grew up with Western medicine being the favored thing. And I used to go to the hospital with my mum basically as daycare. Like I didn't go to daycare. I would just run around the hospital. I lived in a small country town. So it was interesting because as a little kid, I developed this real belief in medicine because I was like, I had so much fun at the hospital all the time, and I would get along with the patients. Little did I know that, they were all sick and dying. They were just happy to see this bright, chirpy little kid running around. And so I grew up with this idea that Western medicine was amazing. My mum was a nurse, and I just thought science and medicine was just the best thing that humans had ever created. And then I sort of grew up a little bit and moved to the city for my research and study. Went to university, and it just became more and more like science and medicine, and naturopathy and Chinese medicine and all of that nonsense was ridiculous. And the idea that food is medicine, which is something I now live by, I thought that was just the most ridiculous statement to have ever heard. And so anyway, I became a molecular biologist, and then I ended up working coincidentally in nutritional epigenetics, where I started learning about the fact that, yeah, obviously the food that we eat has an impact on our body, but we were working exclusively with athletes. And when I was at university, I actually lived with a couple of strength and conditioning coaches of an elite Australian football team. And so that's where I really connected that like food and the body were connected. But for some reason, I don't know, I thought that it was just athletes. I had this naive idea that it's like only athletes care about eating chicken and broccoli and everybody else can do what they want. And so it took a few years, and then I ended up working in cancer research for the last 7 years. And just going into that career sort of open-minded, I was really curious as to why, so my degree was forensics. So I was often involved in death-related audits and reviews and mortality and morbidity meetings, and doing clinical trials and calculating, death data and that type of thing. And so I realized that nobody had ever talked about the cause of the disease. And this was something that just organically popped up. I was like, why? We're in, one of the best cancer hospitals in, Australia, maybe the Southern Hemisphere, maybe the world. Why isn't anybody ever talking about the cause of disease? And so not long after working there, I thought, I really should, get to know this cancer, because I didn't expect to end up in this career. And so I just started at the World Health Organization website, which, after the last couple of years, we don't really know if that's a credible source of information. However, at the time I went there and I discovered in the first sentence on the cancer page, it said 90 to 95% of cancers are caused by diet and lifestyle or cigarette smoking. It's the first sentence, right? And so it's not like this big secret that natural health professionals talk about, that it's like, oh, you can fix all of these chronic diseases with diet or, herbs or whatever it is. It's like actually on the most Western medical business page ever, saying in the first sentence, like it's diet, lifestyle, or smoking. And so I was like, at that point, I was just confused. I was like, well, why is this like not a nutrition facility, basically, you know? Because it also said there's this misconception, and the media and journalists are totally responsible for this, but everybody hears the word cancer and thinks that's it. It's over. You know what I mean? And so, and the media and the culture around cancer as a disease and most chronic diseases is that if you get one, it's game over. And so it also said on that page that it's only about 5 to 7% of people, and this is going back almost 10 years now, so it would have changed a little bit, but not dramatically, that 5 to 7% of cancers were genetic. However, you speak to most people, if you ask anybody on the street, almost everybody will say that cancer is just bad luck, which is essentially saying that your genes just happen to turn on you all of a sudden one day, when actually even the World Health Organization website says it's only this tiny percentage, and the rest are either preventable or at the very least manageable. And so I kind of was losing my mind at this point. I was like, why are doctors not educated in nutrition? And it started to become a little game for me to ask doctors how much nutrition education they had had. The longest amount of time that I was ever answered was 3 lectures. And that was from a professor who was like in his 60s. So that was pretty concerning. And then, yeah, like
lectures,
obviously,
so that was
I know
the greatest amount of time that they had.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my data set was limited to the doctors that I worked with. And there'd be
But
different
still.
types of answers. Yeah, but still, it's pretty concerning, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so from there, I just organically started looking into the truth about cancer, if you like, you know, and the war on cancer that was announced about 60 years ago. And I went down the rabbit hole. And simultaneously, as we were talking before, I had a girlfriend who was sort of suffering from endometriosis and adenomyosis and sometimes lupus. As well, she'd have these flares, and she had surgery, you know, almost 9 times throughout the time we were together, which was almost a decade. And it seemed like I was going on this journey of learning about cancer and chronic disease from this point of view. And then sort of at home with my partner, it seemed like Western medicine was not just not helping, but harming. You know what I mean? And it was like all the doctors were throwing different things at it. And it wasn't until she went on her own journey with diet and traditional Chinese medicine. And one of the biggest pieces of her puzzle was detoxing from the pill, which 90+% of women are put on, you know, for not just for contraception, but for insert any problem, basically. And so, which is effectively hormone replacement. And so, you know, I was simultaneously, these two things were happening. I was watching her slowly fix her body in this totally natural, out there way. And we're including in that, like, energy stuff, you know, energy medicine and Reiki and food and all of these other dimensions that scientific Matty over here was like, that's absurd. That's ridiculous. Like, and so I started to develop these ideas that, wow, maybe things could have been done differently. And so then, yeah, I just looked into the history of Western medicine, realized it's only 150 years old, and traditional Chinese medicine's got about 10,000 years of practice. And the scientist in me says, well, 10,000 years of data is probably a bit stronger than 150 years of data. And so I guess the point as well to make is that Western medicine isn't bad, and I don't think it's bad. I think it's super useful because we live really horribly toxic Western lives, and sometimes we need Western tools in order to get ourselves out of the shit show that we've created, right? And so, but I think these things need to work in unison, and the idea should be when we use Western medicine should be that is like to just get you stable, and then we transition to using the natural health, you know, because we're all animals of nature. So if we're not moving towards food as medicine, or moving towards the herbs or the meditation or the yoga, or, you know, whatever it might be that our body naturally does by itself, then we're just going to stay a slave to the pill, right? The pill for an ill that never ends, which is the pharmaceutical model. And the pharmaceutical companies need sick people to make billions of dollars. Now, I also have a bit of a gripe with natural health professionals that beat up on big pharma, but don't offer a capitalist alternative, because we live in a capitalist world, right? And a lot of natural health people get on podcasts and webinars and whatever and say, big pharma is the worst thing ever, rah, rah, rah. And I don't disagree with that, but we live in a capitalist society. So unless we can suggest an alternative that is incentivized from a capitalist standpoint to move towards natural health and natural medicine and show governments that there is a benefit to healthy people, it's never, ever going to change. So I think there's, a much deeper macroeconomic conversation that needs to facilitate a transition or movement towards that. So anyway, I got to where I am today, basically being really angry that I felt like we were all being lied to by Western medicine, and that a lot of solutions can be found outside the hospital. Watching my partner go through it, watching all the patients die of cancer and nobody once ever talking about diet or lifestyle it just got me fired up. And so I got a nutrition degree and went down the rabbit hole of natural health, and here we are today.
Wow, I love that. That story has so many good things that I want to kind of pull out of it. But the first thing is that, do you have a solution for this, like the macroeconomic, like that, those words don't really compute in my head. So what's your proposed solution to this?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a really macroeconomics, and the way that the world works and trades resources and assets and money, and is a really complex problem. But there needs to be, governments need to see a benefit to people being healthy, a financial benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And that is probably a really challenging thing, because a lot of countries, literally a third of their economy is built on the medical system. Because if you think about the millions of employees that are employed in medicine, not just the patients, but like the amount of taxpayer dollars from people working in those facilities that then pay tax, you know what I mean? Like there's so many angles to come at this. So until the system sees a benefit to making people healthy, which then no longer come back to the facility, which mean less workers in that facility are needed, like there needs to be an entire economic shift of the way that resources are distributed. And it's a monstrous thing, but I think acknowledging that, we can't just shut down big pharma overnight. That's literally probably 1 billion people without a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a huge thing to think about. So I think acknowledging that, it's a very complex problem. And yes, they might have strategically built our world around big pharma and now have total control, but there's been eras of all sorts of things throughout history, and we can deconstruct it and build something new, which I think is arguably this chapter of history that we're experiencing right now is an opportunity to rebuild a better world.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I don't really have much to add to that because that's not my wheelhouse, but I love that you're thinking that way, and that we have people like you who are kind of in this world, getting the wheels turning in that direction. But when you said that you were angry and like really fired up, I relate to that so much, because when I was struggling with my own health issues, I was working as a speech pathologist in a skilled nursing facility. So like a long-term care nursing home / facility. And my patients were so sick. They had so many diagnoses. They had so many medications. And as I started learning about my own health and going down my whole rabbit hole of learning about the Eastern type medicines and, real food and all that, I would listen to some of the complaints of some of my patients when, and they're like, I'm on these medications because I have heartburn and I don't feel well. And I'm like, we need to get you some digestive enzymes. And so I'd be trying to get the doctors to order that, and they don't even know what it is. It's like, of course the patient has trouble digesting. If you take away their stomach acid, that's the first line of digestion. Totally. But I was so enraged. I mean, and then all these patients with diabetes, that it's just like, they were just there. You could just see that it was to make a profit. And it felt like everyone there was being lied to. And I felt that I was lied to when I read Rob Wolf's book called The Paleo Diet Solution. When I started learning about all this, I'm like, we've all been lied to. They told me to eat Special K, and that's why I'm so sick.
Totally.
And it was just, it enraged me. And I believe that rage was what caused me to it causes me to be so passionate. It's because we want to get this message out there that the information that we have been told, and a lot of it is honestly from people who are just trying to sell a product. So they're like, oh, this cereal, because now sometimes we don't have TV, we have streaming services, but now there's commercials on streaming services. I'm like, this is terrible. Yeah. So now I'm hearing commercials again, and they're like, oh, this is so great because of this, and eat this food and take this pill. And a lot of the information that we get as a society is from commercials and people trying to sell products. And that's where
Mm,
we get like a lot of what we truly believe about nutrition is from commercials, right? Would you agree with that?
mhm. Oh, absolutely. And I think as well there's a slight cultural difference between Australia and America. Like I remember being in America and I've been there a bunch of times for conferences and to speak at retreats and things like that and just a holiday as well. But that like America is so out there with their drug advertising and their Western medicine advertising, and people think in Australia that it's we're totally different because Australians are relaxed. We kind of don't. Nobody really complains too much, and people love that about Australians. But the thing is, the exact same thing happens. It just happens behind the scenes. So it's
Um,
identical here. The business and pharmaceutical model is identical. People just don't know about it. And I think yeah, it was when I first went to America. I was like, this is insane, like how in front of everybody it is. And like people even know, I mean, we're in this era of vaccines where people are talking about the brand of vaccine. Even that's weird to me. Whereas when I went to America, like most people go to the doctor knowing the drug they want to buy. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, how about we just lower the carbs? We can solve the next 40 years of insulin problems you've got. You know what I mean? Like, it's full on. And I think as well, we also get it from not just advertising, but we trust people that we love, right? And so when we see our parents do something particular or friends, then we just follow the same path. And I often say that the thing that gets handed down in families that's a problem is rarely genetics. It's not a genetic problem. It's usually the habits, the routines, and the recipes and the way that we live and eat that is the problem. That's why there's a pattern in your family, because you've all eaten the same, because you've all behaved the same or managed your stress the same way. But yeah, advertising is a huge contributor. And it's the same now. Even I notice I use the Waze app to travel,
yeah.
and like the amount of KFC ads that I get on the Waze app is crazy. Like it's just like every corner basically. Oh, the nearest KFC is 2.7 kilometers away.
Wow. It really tells you that? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Yeah, KFC's the most, but you get all of them. You get 7-Eleven and Krispy Kreme donuts and like I'm like, go
Wow.
away. How can I turn this off?
Wow. Yeah, it's wild. And going back to what you said about the families, and then also what
Hmm.
you said earlier about genes versus environment, this is a really great
Hmm.
time to talk about the fact that yes, we do have, genes from our family, but we know that through like identical twin studies that, lifestyle is turning on and off these genes. And that's a very simplified way of putting it,
Yeah.
but that's fine. We could do simple science on this show. So when we're like, if we know that if there are two identical twins, they have the same DNA, and one of them goes out and is smoking cigarettes, is drinking a lot, going out and, not paying attention to their sleep and eating fast food. And then the other one is working out and getting sleep and eating a healthy diet. What are the chances of each of them getting certain diseases? Obviously, we know, like, we could just intuitively know that the twin
Hmm.
who's, partying and having all these bad habits is obviously going to be sicker. And so we know that the
Yeah.
environment is turning on and off these genes. And I like the saying that genetics loads the gun, but environment
Mm.
pulls the trigger. And so we can keep these genes from expressing themselves. If we have a gene for cancer, we can keep it from expressing itself by eating in a healthy way. So can you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, totally. I love that saying as well. Like, yeah, because many of us, one way to look at it is that all of us have the exact same genetics for our skin color, right? Black people, white people, Latina people, Asian people, we all have the same set of genetics. It's a different set of those genetics that is switched on to express our skin color. And it's the same with our eye color. So we all have different skin color, we all have different eye color because it's a different combination, a different expression level, different proteins as a result of those expressions. So there's all these little factors. And so it's the same when it comes to, the susceptibility to diseases, is that we often have all of these genes the same in all of us. It's just whether or not they get turned on. And like, for instance, cancer. So a healthy immune system produces cancer cells. It's like all of us have cancer cells in us all of the time. It's part of just being human. The immune system is always checking those out. It keeps the immune system primed to make sure the immune system is picking up on those defective cells or those misfolded proteins. So like a super healthy person will have about 1,000 to 1,500 cancer cells in their body. And so the issue is that over time, that number accumulates because the poor diet, the poor lifestyle causes the immune system genetics to start to become defective or distracted with bigger tasks like blood sugar or like gut repair because we've been putting vegetable oils in and sugar in, or managing all the complications that come from stress because we don't have an emotional management system or we don't have connection and love and stuff in our lives. And so eventually these cancer cells can run rampant. Obviously, we can also have a single event that can be really catastrophic, that can just totally switch everything on, full bore. And then we just it's one of those situations where it's like overnight, stage 4 cancer just kind of came out of nowhere. And of course, we have the unlucky people who do fall into that 5 to 7% in cancer, particularly, that get it genetically, and that sucks. And unfortunately, there's an uncomfortable conversation that Western culture doesn't like to have, and that's people are meant to die. Unfortunately, we're all that ties every human on the planet together, the fact that we're meant to die. And so yeah, it's the same if we look into diabetes and Alzheimer's, which is now being referred to as diabetes type 3 because of its link to the blood sugar and the insulin defectiveness. And we tie into that a lack of sleep. I truly believe that sleep is the absolute core foundational variable of all health. And so if you have a system, like here's just a bit of info for the listeners on Alzheimer's and dementia, is that so during your sleep, you have a system called the glymphatic system. So you might have heard lymphatic. This is glymphatic with a G, and that cleans out the beta amyloid plaques in your brain every single night. It's like a system that just washes out the brain. And so if you don't get enough sleep every night, that system is limited. And what that system does is takes out those beta amyloid plaques, and the buildup of those leads to dementia and Alzheimer's. And so if you have below 6 hours of sleep every night for 15 years, you've got a buildup. So your susceptibility to Alzheimer's goes up. Again, it's another lifestyle factor. And if you've got a history of that in your family, you may look into your family history and realize that there was sleep issues for the last 200 years worth of people, right? So it's back to that. We've all got the potential for things to go wrong and the genetics to go wrong. But if we create an environment that means that that situation is so incredibly unlikely, then it won't happen, right? So, well, in theory, it won't happen. Most of the time, it won't. Unfortunately, there are some unlucky people. But yes, I totally agree with the saying that the genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger. And that's why holistic health is so important, whether it be your emotions. And I think a lot of people roll their eyes at like the emotional spirituality side of things. But if you relate that to your emotions, like you feel anger in your body, you feel calmness in your body, and they're all electrical impulses and hormones in your gut. They're actual physical things that we need to work with. So yeah, like, we're all susceptible to lots of these things in this world because we're exposed to the same world. It's how we manage and navigate that space that will dictate the outcome.
So good. So much good information in there. And I totally agree where some people, and even just, I think that we underestimate, maybe some people will buy into like, oh yeah, stress. We can all say like, okay, stress, maybe this emotional state, like a non-happy, content emotional state can contribute to disease. But I think that myself included, we often underestimate just how much stress can cause issues. And then we also underestimate what causes the body stress, because many of us think like stress is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late and there's traffic and like this acute issue where there's something happening. But stress can also be like, oh my gosh, my inbox, or like, this Instagram video is not uploading, or I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have so many things to do today. Like just being on all the time, which I totally relate to. And I mean, even if you just hear how quickly I speak, some people are like, you speak so quickly. I'm like, I'm from New York. You're like, we're born like this, But I think that also, that stress, there's so many things that can stress out the body. Someone just commented to me on Instagram today, and she said, I've come down with a cold and my fasting blood sugars are at least, 10 to 15 points higher than normal, which is like 1 millimole higher than normal on average. And it's like, what's going on? It's like, well, the body is stressed because it's sick.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things that can cause stress. And all of this is greatly impacting our body. And even just, I have my clients or some of my students in my group program talk about, I'll say, think about, you have a lemon in front of you. It's this juicy lemon. It smells so good. And it's really cold. You just took it out of the fridge and you cut it open with a knife. You look at this lemon, there's juice dripping out of it, and you go to bite into the lemon. It's like, are you salivating? Like, I'm full on like salivating. So your thoughts just created a physical response in your body. You can sit here and think about, how the pandemic is being handled, and you will get this rush of cortisol and stress hormones in your body. It speeds up your heart. You can feel the effect. So, whether you believe in energy or not, you can even just come back to, just to ground it for yourself, is just coming back to whatever emotional state that you're in is creating a hormonal, like you said, response in your body. And that is going to change how your physical body expresses over time. It's wild. So do you have any more information on the stress? Because I loved what you said about sleep and how it's such the core. That's why I have my sleep tracker ring on. I mean, I am obsessed with my sleep. That is so paramount for me. So can you talk a little bit more about this? Because I bet you have more to say.
Yeah, totally. Sleep. I'm all about sleep. My room is the darkest room you'll ever find.
Me too.
Yeah, biohack my sleep as much as I can. But same with stress. And I guess it's lots of men and women are going to be find it difficult to navigate stress. But I guess myself as a man, I've got the experience of, men not talking about their feelings and, trying to hold it in and be really manly about it, which just causes more stress, right? And I think, that lemon example is a brilliant example. And I think another example is just thinking about a thing that happened 25 years ago that was really sad. How, you notice it in your body, your shoulders will slump. And even the way that you hold your body dictates the hormone release throughout the body. So you can totally manufacture these cortisol responses, although we don't want to, you totally can. I think the other thing with stress is, especially when we talk about things like intermittent fasting, you often hear like, oh, I heard it's, stressful for women, or I heard that it stresses out the body. And there's a sort of a distinction to make between hormetic stress, which is good for the body, because feasting, like the reason that somebody's talking to me about intermittent fasting is because feasting has quite literally stressed their body out as well, right? So it's all about the context in which you experience the stress and can you recover from it. So if you go to the gym and you're sore, you've put some hormetic stress onto the body to encourage your body to grow and repair and be better. But you have to balance that stress with recovery. And that's one mistake that people make, is that they're like, I need a routine, need to be at the gym the same time every single day. And so they never have this space for recovery, which then shows up as this underlying chronic stress, because the inflammation in their body as a result of the hormetic stress has led to this damaging stress that's just perpetually there because we don't give the body space to recover. And it's the same. We can't just, a lot of people say, just stress less. Has that ever worked for anyone? Right? It's about management. It's about becoming either resilient or identifying when a stressful trigger has occurred in your body. And this can take years of, emotional awareness sort of exercises and deep diving into yourself, but you have to balance it. We have to live a balanced life. And I know that's kind of a generic word, like eat in moderation. What does that even mean? But what I mean is, for every stressful event you experience, you need to create space on the other side of it in order to come back down, in order to consciously bring those hormones back down, return to a place of calm, peace, happiness, contentment, whatever it might be, rather than, holding this furrow in your forehead for the whole day or the whole week, or this resentment that comes as a result of some of these things. There has to be a balance. It's okay to be triggered. It means that you care. You know what I mean? If you have a reaction or you're stressed, it means that you care about something. But balancing that with creating space on the other side of it to reduce that stress, because otherwise we end up with, gut issues are a massive, result of stress issues, because a lot of the hormones that are involved with this thing happen in the gut. But also being stressed pushes us into that fight and flight and reactivity response. And so when we've eaten food, even if we've eaten healthy, we halt peristalsis, which is, the movement of food through our gut. And so therefore we're not absorbing correctly. That might lead to bloating, that might lead to diarrhea. And then we've started this whole cycle within our body of problems that are as a result of the stress, even though we might not relate them to the meal we had 3 hours ago. And then we have diarrhea and all these little events that are connected to the same stressful event that happened in the beginning. So I think, creating a space after stressful events, and that might be setting up something with your partner, that might be having a little routine with yourself, whatever it might be, is so important to bring yourself back. And I think a useful tool for that in any context is breath work, because it can happen in 2 minutes. You can bring your heart rate back down. You can get your parasympathetic back to where it needs to be so rapidly with breath work.
I love that. This has been what I've been really obsessed with. And my favorite word ever is like hormesis, what you talked about. And so we need stress. So we don't want to think about it's so many people are probably like, well, I can't get rid of my stress. Like I can't get rid of my, bad boss or whatever it is. So there are certain situations in our life that we can't change. Right. And so
for sure.
We need to find some way to adapt to them, or like you said, leave that space afterwards. So if you know that you have a certain meeting with a certain client or someone who stresses you out, can you plan to, do some breath work for a few minutes after that to come out of that state? Even I'll tell people, if you're working out, take a shavasana at the end, which is when you lie down at the end of yoga and you just lay there for a few minutes, because that helps your body get out of that fight and flight state. So then you can move into your day and not continually be stressed. I love that you brought up so many nuggets in here and so many things that I literally almost sound verbatim out of my mouth, like what I talk about all the time telling my clients. And obviously it's very obvious why we are so connected. So
totally.
And so you talk about how people, have this routine and that they have to go to the gym at the same time every day. And I understand for a lot of people, they'll say that keeps me sane. That keeps me, that's the only thing I have. It's like, okay, so could you alternate, could you tune in to, instead of autopilot, can you ask your body, like, do I feel that I need a rest? You might not know. Maybe, at the beginning you just start and it's like, okay, I'm going to, instead of doing 6 days a week of like high intensity, maybe it's like, let's try 4 days a week, high intensity, and two days a week, a yoga practice or something less intense, like even Pilates or something like that, where it's lower impact, lower stress, because yes, exercise is a hormetic stress, but we can only, when we talk about hormesis, it's stressing the organism so that it adapts and becomes stronger. So if someone has a sprained ankle, you don't tell them like, go to the gym. It's good for you to work out. It's a good stress. No, it would be too much stress, obviously, on that person's ankle. So just the same as if you are a stressed person, probably your adrenals are the ones suffering a lot and your whole hormonal system. So think about your adrenals as sprained, if we can keep the same example. So if you have these quote sprained adrenals, you can't go and push them super hard by doing all this high intensity work, because you will feel tired afterwards. And like a really good way to know that if a workout was beneficial for you or it was too much for you is listening to your body afterwards. So if you are tired later that day or the next day, it was too much for your body. And so if you're on autopilot and just going, pushing yourself, oh, I'm tired, I'm supposed to leave the gym, feeling exhausted. I can't tell you how many times I've heard clients say that to me, right? I'm sure you've heard this too. It's like, well, totally. I feel like if I don't leave exhausted, I didn't do it. It's like, you shouldn't feel exhausted. Like you should feel you worked maybe, or I mean, let's even take out these shoulds, but like, you can see maybe how this autopilot can be damaging. We don't want to do anything on autopilot. We don't like sameness. We don't want to fast the same way every day. We don't want to eat the same way every day. The body adapts so well, but also if we're doing a practice that is too much for our body at certain times and we take out the listening to our body part, then we are just overriding our body's communication. So symptoms are our body's way of talking to us. So if we're exhausted and tired and we're like, oh, I just need to go to the gym. I love the dedication. I love the motivation, but let's channel it into like, like you're so aggressively taking care of your body, but let's do it in a way that's helpful for your body and restorative, because sometimes your body just needs that downtime, you know? So yeah.
Totally. What you're saying reminds me, I often use a car example. If you
Mhm.
leave the car engine on permanently, you'll only get about 6 months out of that car until it breaks because it's been on 24 hours a day. But if you turn it off every day, you can get 10 years out of that car, right? Same engine, space in between times that the engine was on, right? And I think,
So good.
yeah, I think a lot of people take that attitude of like, yeah, it keeps me sane. But if you take a broader perspective, it's like you might only get 10 more years out of that body going to the gym instead of 25. You know what I mean?
So good. So good. Yeah, that's such a brilliant example. And it's so, so true that we need these breaks and that we don't often. I've been trying to get a meditation practice in. It was one of the hardest things for me to do ever is meditate and sit and stop and meditate. I have successfully meditated. So today is December 20th. I have meditated every single day since November 6th. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I feel so proud of myself. And I've done these stints before, but this, I don't know, it feels a little different because I'm realizing I have to do it first thing when I get up. And so we had this when I was in camp when I was a kid, we had rice, dry rice, and we had a big rock and a jar. And they said, okay, try to, fill up, put the rice in and then try to get the rock in. And we couldn't. And the example was, it was with God, it was church camp, but take this example for whatever you want. And so they said that you had to put the rock in first and then everything goes around it. So what do you need to be your rock? What do you need most in your health? So for me, it's slowing down. It's getting a meditation practice. And I do a lot of breath work. Let's, pencil that and come back to it. But we have to put that in first or else we won't do it. So it's like you either schedule it in or do it first thing, or we find that it just doesn't get done. So yeah. Do you have that same experience?
Yeah, totally. And something that comes to mind, just even as you're saying, like you've done these stints before with the meditation, I think there's a lot of people out there that think that, not think, it's not their fault because, advertising and marketing, even in the natural health world, even in the nutrition world, is, selling you these quick fixes and these solutions. And by default, those solutions imply or even say when you sign up to them that you've just got to be strong and just have willpower and you'll last the 8 weeks. And then on week 9, you can go back to eating the way that you used to eat. So, and then we have this diet culture that sort of, and it bleeds into everything, meditation practice, yoga practice, all of these things that are good for us. If we take this willpower attitude to it, then we only do it for a short stint and then we kind of give up. And so I think there's a bit missing in there that many people are unaware of. And I think people, a lot of practitioners are starting to talk about it. And that's that there needs to be an identity shift. Like you need to see yourself now as a meditator, not as somebody who's going to try meditation for a few weeks, as someone who does meditation or someone that looks after themselves. Because some people say, I just run on stress. I'm a busy person. And that sentence right there is a belief about how you operate. And you were given that belief or you developed that belief through experience or from watching your mother or your father or your people around you when you were younger as to how you should show up in the world. And so what we need to do is actually work on that belief, because if you don't change that belief, we can't subtract willpower out of the conversation. And we all know that willpower runs out. Like it's a finite resource and we have to replace it with a new belief or new identity, because we have that willpower is a finite resource. We have to replace it with an infinite resource, which is either going to be self-love or self-respect. And when we move into that space, then we don't necessarily have to rely on willpower. Yeah, there'll be some days where it's a bit more challenging than others, but it's part of your identity. So you're not going to let yourself down by avoiding it.
I love that. That's so, so important to think about, these limiting beliefs that keep us really stuck. And until I actually did a limiting belief workshop with our other friend in our mastermind, and that is where I instilled the belief that I am a meditator and that I don't have to be good at it, but it's something that I do. And I started to embrace that as part of my identity. And that's who I am. I become that person. And I've done that with my diet. It's like my diet and lifestyle, I feel like I'm a healthy person because I value my health above all else, because without my health, I don't have anything else. So, you know, I found that out the hard way when I was prioritizing working over my health, and then my health suffered, and then I couldn't work anymore. So it always is reinforcing that, you know, sometimes you fall off, but you come back to it because it's that important. You find that it's so important. So that is just everything you're saying is just so quotable and and so helpful.
Well, the other thing, I guess that's why I mainly work with busy mums, and like we've had lots of conversations about that kind of thing. But the reason that I'm kind of motivated is because I think mums generally, sometimes fathers, sometimes aunties, uncles, grandparents, but mostly mothers are the person that models health in the house. And so we've grown up in this world where we've watched the internet, like, you know, our generation has gone from before dial-up, before the internet even existed, to basically AI controlling our lives. Do you know what I mean? Social media, digital dictatorships, like, and a lot has changed. And so we've got these mums in the world that were kind of busy before, but now busy is like another world, and nobody prioritized self-care, you know, and so I think that working with busy mums is super important to teach them how to prioritize their own health, because the way that we as adults usually prioritize our own health is how our parents prioritize their health. And now we've got this psychology and mum guilt and dad guilt. That's a real thing. However, we've got to figure out a way to navigate that space, because you're just teaching your children how to treat themselves as independent adults. And so even though at the dinner table, you're like, eat your veggies or do this or do that, if they watch you go and do something different, that is exactly what they will do as adults. And then, you know, you might have them for the first 20-ish years, but hey, they're on their own for the next 60. So we've got to model good health and model self-care. And even if it's 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, one night a week, mum has a bath, dad deals with the kids, you know, and everybody's family situation is different, but just practicing, you know, for the mothers in our world, doing what's right for them means that by default, the kids are going to absorb that. They might go through this rebellious phase. I definitely did at university, where I got to uni and had chocolate and beer for breakfast on the first day. It was amazing. But eventually they're going to come back to, what did my parents do? How did my parents stay well and healthy and able? And I think that's so, so important, is that the mothers of our world are so impactful on the future of the planet's health.
I love that. And I totally agree. And it made me reflect on my own mom, who throughout my life, my mom was always into staying thin and fit. And because she was not very active throughout her childhood, but she noticed that she was always thin. And she noticed that after she graduated high school, she started to gain a little weight. And so she was like, you know, what's going on? I want to keep my slim figure. And so she read like diet magazines, and she started playing racquetball. And so she started getting active. And then, you know, she was reading the tips of the time, which was, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s, when it was all like low fat stuff. And so my mom took to that, and she and her twin sister, they have this built-in kind of accountability / competition. So they are the two most dedicated to working out people you will ever meet in your life. And throughout my childhood, when I was born, my mom always she went to the gym. She left us in the nursery to be cared for by the child care taker. And we grew up seeing my mom go to the gym, and we went to these fitness fun classes when we were younger. And I was always in dance, and my brother was in, sports. And I always stayed active through my whole life. And my mom was also, in her own way, caring about nutrition from her own, what she cared about with it. So definitely different stuff. She's like, oh my God, I could never eat what you eat. It scares me. But, she's really in that low fat camp, but she's doing what works for her. And she was always into making sure that we, stayed healthy in the way that she thought was healthy. Right. And so it was never like, we weren't a family to have fast food. She cooked food. It was like, she was into portion size and portion control a lot. And I think that saved me a little bit because of, the types of food I ate. And I always people are like, you have so much discipline. I'm like, I feel like I get it from my mom, but you're right. Like it comes from, I saw her habits and I saw how
Yeah.
strict she was with it. And it was, it was part of our routine. And, I really admire that. And I agree so much that it does come from the mom. So what else do you feel like, so I guess I feel like I want to ask, what do you feel like could start helping someone who's so busy, who has so much, like, where can we start?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think the first place to start is just identifying what is in your life. Like usually super busy mums or anybody, super busy anyone, like has so much going on. They're usually going from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other. And there's a real lack of presence because there's just so much going on. So I would just start by simply taking stock of your life. Like what is actually in your life? What is totally necessary? What do you actually not even care about? Like, and it's funny that we're doing this around Christmas time, because I think a lot of families blow up around this time of year because people have spent a long year doing a lot of stuff they didn't want to do. Maybe they have a job that they don't particularly enjoy, or maybe they are in a relationship that's difficult, or, there's lots of things that are kind of uncomfortable about life. And I think, that life is meant to be challenging, but then we get to Christmas and then we feel forced to hang out with all these people that we're just like, I just hate these people. I don't even like these people. I just have to rock up to this event. And so I think a lot of our lives have these components throughout the year, which is why the explosion happens at Christmas, because it's kind of all at once. But yeah, figure out in your life, what do you like? What do you care about? What are you doing because somebody expects you to? What are you doing out of obligation? And if you actually figure that out and then say, I actually don't want to do X, Y, Z, or I actually want to do something different instead of that, I would start from there, because you're going to reduce the chaos of your world. But the other thing is too, you've got to remember that potentially you're wired for that level of chaos. So if you move some things around, you're just going to create the same degree of chaos with different pieces, right? And this comes back to the belief and identity thing, and working out who you are. And these are big questions. This is not like, oh, I've listened to the podcast with Matty and Danny and solved my life's problems. So it's a lot of work to do, but that's where you need to begin. It's like this personal development journey, and health is just a consequence of that, a great consequence. But figuring out who you are, why the noise that's in your life is there, what you like to do, what you don't like to do, why are you doing the things that you don't like to do? Like, have you got some beliefs around, oh, well, I've got to because my friend Mary will think I'm a jerk if I don't do that, or I've got to do this to keep my mum happy because there's, I've got a difficult conversation that I need to have with my mum that I haven't had for 15 years. Like, there's all these little pieces that are draining us. And back to the stress thing, all of these things increase our baseline stress that we're experiencing on a daily basis, because we get up to the world and have all these things that we have to manage and manage our response to and our engagement with, and leave these engagements feeling like, oh, I should have said this, or, oh, it's so difficult dealing with that person or doing this. So I think if we can start by reducing the list of things in our life that suck, and we've all got them, that we don't want to do, then that's a brilliant place to start. And then in place of that, you can either introduce things that are great, or that can be the space that you start taking to reduce the stress, to be present. And being present can be scary. That's why many of us have an aversion to getting into meditation, because we get to be with ourselves. And a lot of people are busy and chaotic because being with themselves is a really scary thing. Therefore, I literally will say, start with 1 minute at a time. 1 minute of presence at a time. Put a timer on, don't hold your phone, close your eyes, 1 minute. That's it. And then next week, go to 2 minutes. Slowly build up. And I know 1 minute feels like, oh, what's the point, Matty? It's about building the muscle. It's not that you're going to become a monk in 1 minute. It's that it's about you're building the muscle and the safety and the certainty and the security in that space with yourself, because you're not alone. Many of us are scared of that. I was totally scared of meditation, because being with myself and thinking about some of the horrible things that happened in my childhood, I don't want to think about those awful thoughts, right? But in order for them to no longer be a subconscious burden in the back of my life forever, bringing them up and confronting them and dealing with them means that they're gone forever, right? Which is so much nicer. So start 1 minute at a time. So yeah, take stock of your life and then introduce presence 1 minute at a time.
I love it. So good. I would say most, if not everything, in terms of things that we want to change and things we want to improve in our life, it really starts with awareness. So shining that light of awareness on what is going on in my life, and, what are the things that I can change, and what are the things I can change my reaction to, what are the things that I can add in to give me more peace, to help bring me down. And so we pinned breath work. So I'd love to come back to this. It's something that I love personally. I have this device on right now, and it measures my heart rate variability. And that is sort of the difference between heartbeats when you inhale and exhale. It's some metric, and basically it tells you how resilient your body is to stress. So the higher the number, the better when it comes to HRV. HRV decreases a lot as we age. But it's something, a really good metric that we can use to tell us how our body's responding to stress. And what I love about this meter that I have on, it's called Leaf Get Leaf, LIEF, like relief. And it shows you in real time what your HRV is. So you can do breath work and see how the breath work is impacting your nervous system. And for someone like me, who is a little bit more grounded, like I totally believe in energy and things, but I'm not like super out there like a lot of other people are. I'm like 1 foot in the energy world and 1 foot on the like rational science. Like I need to see it, feel it, touch it, experience it, like, or,
Totally.
have some data, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like in both of these camps. So for me, it's really cool to see that, I did a 2-minute breath work session using the 4-7-8 breath, inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And my HRV went up 20 points. That was this morning. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's huge. So can you tell us a little bit more about, breath work, maybe some strategies, why it's good? Like, what is breath work,
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, it's funny because people think, again, we've grown up in this medicalized world where complexity, like things get more and more complex and intense and detailed. And the idea that breath work can be used is like, what do you mean? That's so simple. Like, my body breathes on it on its own. And so, yeah, breathwork's been used in so many cultures, like as a tool in order to control the body. And obviously the one that we can relate to the most is like monks, right? Monks spend a lot of time meditating and focusing on their breath and the frequencies that they can make with their voice box throughout their body. And we're starting to see lots of different practitioners, breathwork practitioners come up now because people are starting to realize the impact that this has. And in an extremely stressed world, breathwork is something that can, lower our stress and build both lower our stress and build our resilience to it. And that's one of the beautiful things about being present is focusing on your breath and bringing your heart rate down and bringing your cortisol down. And therefore, so I get people to do breathwork, the 4-7-8, when they wake up in the morning. Before they go to sleep, it can slow the system down in order to get to sleep. Before they eat, but when you sit down to food, before you eat, it facilitates that peristalsis and the movement through the gut. Because if you're stressed, remember we talked about before, if we're stressed, then the gut's not going to do its job properly and sometimes won't do its job at all. So we want to breathe and reduce the stress in the system before we eat to get the most out of the food that we're eating. It's just such a powerful tool. Also to bring clarity to mind, like to be like, if you're triggered or angry or stressed about a thing that's just happened, or you've got this feeling in you that like, I know I'm angry and I'm not thinking rationally, or I'm not talking about the right things and I'm not representing myself the way that I want to, even doing that brings function back to your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain that thinks logically and thinks rationally. And so doing these 4-7-8 breath work, and you can do them for a minute, you can do them for 10 minutes, you can do it for half an hour if you like, but it's just really getting control of that sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system and pushing them back into the balance that you need to make healthy decisions for your body to function in a healthy way. And I think it's just, breathwork is just so simple. It's like breathe. And yeah, you can control, obviously it's an involuntary thing, but as soon as you take it into the voluntary space and start changing the length of the in-breath and the length of the out-breath, and I guess the way to think about it too is that you can go either way. You can either even stress your body out with breath work if you do it in the opposite direction. So if you do it in the other way, which Danny just mentioned, so 4 breaths in, so a shorter amount of time in and a longer amount of time out, that's going to lead to relaxation. And things in the opposite direction are going to lead to stress, right? It's going to, and a lot of people will do the opposite before a competition, before they do a public speaking event. You know, they'll try and get themselves hyped up by putting more into the system. Even during a workout, sometimes you might want to do those really fast kind of breathing exercises to fill the blood full of oxygen so you've got enough capacity to lift or whatever it might be. So the air, the oxygen in the world is it's free. You can do whatever you like with it. So you might as well harness it for the best health outcomes that you can create.
For sure. And it's just like you were saying before, it feels like there's so many new scientific invention. It feels like, seriously, that's it? You just want me to breathe? Like, it can't be that good. It is that good. I mean, it's just like sleep. It's something we do naturally. We know that sleep, it's free. It's amazing. It's necessary. So many of the best things that we could do for our body, like most of the best things we could do for our body, don't involve anything at all, like getting sunlight, getting outside. Totally. Again, free, natural. Like, it's these natural things that are in our body, because our body is a self-healing machine, and we forget that. We are so disconnected from that. And so when you were talking about food as medicine, the food that we eat becomes us. We break down the nutrients and assimilate them, and they become us. Where do you think you get the raw materials to make this skin? It comes from the food that you eat, and we forget that. And we forget that, okay, we know that if I cut my hand right here, I don't need to do anything at all. My hand will just immediately start healing. It will stop bleeding, and you'll see. And then a few hours later, it looks different. And then, a day later, it looks different, because the body's just working so fast to heal it. That exact same mechanism is going on inside of our bodies at all times. So I can't tell you how many times when I was sick and I had chronic disease issues, allergies, PCOS, all this stuff, that I was like, my body hates me. My body's rebelling on me. And that is so not accurate. Our bodies are fighting so hard for us. And these symptoms are our body's way of communicating with us. And sometimes they're our body's way of coping and keeping us alive. And so it's just, we need to respect that, listen to that, but also just be so in touch with that. And so we know that what our bodies can do by themselves are so powerful. And so not only does the body, when it gets in this nice rest and digest parasympathetic state, we know that it increases peristalsis, it also turns on digestion. So it starts to gives us saliva. That's when the saliva is produced. There's digestive enzymes in there. It turns on stomach acid production, which is the start of all this chemical and digestion. And it stimulates bile and release of pancreatic enzymes. So we need, for the entire digestive process, we need to be in rest and digest state. And the digestive process is where we get the nutrients to make our entire body. So it's so important. I love everything you're saying. And I feel like there were so many things on my list that I wanted to talk about. I feel like we didn't really get to those things, but if you have another minute, I would love to talk about a little bit into diet culture and why diets fail. Because I think this is a great topic that some people could benefit from. I feel like everything we talked about was so great, and I'm glad that we went off plan, but I do want to talk about this. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, totally. I think we kind of touched on it a little bit before, like this, the natural health kind of world and the nutrition world, the diet world is totally susceptible to this pill for an ill type advertising. If you just do this for 8 weeks, then it's going to work. And then, it comes back to the fact that most diets, we know now science moves at the rate that it moves. And so, you kind of can't blame people for getting it wrong. I've never met a doctor that was ill intent, right? I've never met a dietitian that wanted to hurt anybody. They were just doing the best they could at the time. And so we know now that there's lots of research that's come out and truth that's come out about fat and different types of macronutrients that need to be on the plate. The low fat movement happened, and you could argue that that was a bit of a fraudulent activity by Ansel Keys that kicked that off back in the day. But anyway, the point is that all the diets for basically the last 70 to 100 years, although the nutritional component hasn't been quite right and has been steered in the wrong direction for many people. I mean, there's some people that benefit from high carbohydrate grain diets, I'm sure. I haven't met them, but I'm sure that they do. But now we know a little bit more about the food, but the bit that's missing is the emotions. Like there's never a snack in the day that's unemotional. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that we don't, like, we're a human, we're dynamic, we're always feeling an emotion. So when we eat, we're having an emotional experience. And for many people, there's an emotion, that a common set of emotions that are tied to the times that they eat or that drive the food choices. And many of us know, like, oh, you know, I get home from work, I'm tired, I'm just going to order a pizza, you know? So, or it could be in the middle of the day, I'm stressed, so I went to the cafe and I got a cake. You know, and we might start realizing these patterns in our life and being like, whoa, okay, I didn't even realize I was an emotional eater. And I would never have described myself as an emotional eater. But I would argue from my experience that almost everyone is an emotional eater on some level, particularly with snacks. Like meals can, you know, we obviously need to function, but I really believe that there's no snack that's unemotional. And so all this diet culture for the last however many decades has focused on the nutrition on the plate as per government guidelines at the time, but totally neglected that food is emotional and it can be good and bad. That's why I actually don't call food good or bad. In my program, we call it mood food, because it depends on the mood. You can have cake because you feel terrible about your life, or you can have cake because you're celebrating somebody's birthday. The mood is dependent on the context, right? And it's not always something that needs to go in the bad thing category either. But the point is that there's an emotion attached to it, and you might have it because of an emotion, and then afterwards you'll have an emotion that beats you up for it. So if you go into a diet or a nutritional regime, or even actually a therapeutic situation with a practitioner or a doctor, and you don't factor in the emotions that lead to the right behaviors or lead to the incorrect behaviors that created this situation, you're going to inevitably fall back to the person that you were before, because that feels comfortable and familiar. And people say, you know, and one way to think about it is like, why do people say, why do I always go for the bad guy? I'm always dating bad men, you know, or I'm always going for women that aren't stable. And it's because even though you know it's bad for you, your emotions and your nervous system are set up for that to be familiar and for that to be the safest that you feel and the most certain that you feel, because you can predict the outcomes with something that you're familiar with. It's the same with the way that we engage with food. Even when we know the food is not great for us, it's going to create a feeling, a situation, a response in our body that we are familiar with, even if that is not good for us. And that familiarity might be self-loathing. That familiarity might be beating yourself up, right? And so diet culture has perpetually failed everyone. Irrelevant of the nutrition guidelines, we've still ended up in 2021 with a world of fat, sick, nearly dead people, right? That's the whole reason that we're here, Daddy, trying to help the world, right? Because there's so much work to be done because of terrible diet advice for the last however long. So I think you should never move into the next chapter of your health journey, or any chapter, without someone that can't support that emotional part, because you might have a great experience, you might lose the weight, you might fix your gut, you might do whatever you need to do, get rid of the cancer, whatever it is. But then if you don't emotionally level up, change your identity to someone that lives that way now, you're naturally going to slowly default back into where feels comfortable, where you were before. And then that's why we have yo-yo dieting. It's like a pendulum. Extreme health, like extremely unhealthy, and then back and forth, right? So I think that's why diet culture is so damaging. It doesn't support emotional upgrade, identity change, and digging deep into these drivers of our behavior that aren't just, well, you didn't eat the right thing. It's so much deeper than that.
Totally. Wow. That's so good. And I love that mood food and connecting what we're eating with an emotion. And I know that something that's been really helpful for several clients of mine is just putting a pad of paper in the kitchen. And every single time you go to eat, every single time, you just make it a habit, you just write the emotional state that you feel at that time. So I'm eating breakfast. I feel a little tired. I feel content. I feel, you know, whatever, just write how you feel. And then it's like, oh, I'm in the kitchen. It's like, oh, I'm going to grab a snack. Why am I here? It's like, I'm bored. I'm putting off work. Like, you know, those aren't necessarily emotions, but that's why I'm there. Like, that would be why I would be there, you know? It's like, and so you start making these connections, and it's not even, if you write in the journal, you don't even have to not do anything if you see something. It's just to, again, start shining that light of awareness onto your behaviors. And so start taking inventory of this, write it down, write it in your phone, whatever. So you have your phone on you, not a pad of paper, but that it would be a really good type of exercise for you to do. And that's what we do first in my blood sugar mastery program is I have people write down how they're feeling when they eat, because it is so, emotions are so connected with food. I mean, every single celebration has some sort of food involved in it. And, we need to eat to live. And so the lines get blurred. And just like you said, we could be having cake if we're upset or cake if we're excited. And so sometimes we want to eat the cake because we had it when we were excited. We want it to make us excited again. We want it to pull us out. And then, maybe start brainstorming some things that you can do instead of cake to raise your energy. What can I do to make myself feel better? Sometimes it's like, we just want to feel better. And so breath work can make you feel better,
Totally.
Getting outside, taking a walk, even when you're like, God, I don't want to do this. Taking a walk makes you feel so much better. And that's really simple. Getting out in nature, getting sunshine, you get endorphins when the sun hits your skin, even if you're not making vitamin D. Taking a hot bath with essential oils, calling a friend, watching. One of my favorite things to do if I'm in a bad mood, if I'm not feeling well, is like going on YouTube and watching something that's going to make me laugh, like stand-up comedy. And sometimes you could be in a really low place and you're like, you're not in the mood. Music is a really great state changer. Do you have any other favorite go-tos?
Yeah, I think if you've got healthy relationships at home that are not responsible for the emotion you're experiencing, a hug is actually so fulfilling. Okay. And that's the key. You want to fulfill that space. You want to feel fulfilled. And we're often looking, to fill a void, whether it's pain, whether it's boredom, whether we're avoiding a task because it feels too challenging. So I think anything that involves your physicality is a really, really good idea, because we're putting food into our body to feel a physical feeling, right? Not just the food, but also an emotion. So if we do something with our body, get outside, bare feet on the earth type thing, sun, like you mentioned, hugs, laughing. Again, it's back to that. I'm using the body for something. So I think physicality as a swap out with food is really, really beneficial. The other thing I would say is that for people that are listening is that as they're starting to, learn from our discussion, like to actually not intervene in the beginning. So just instead of being like, oh, I'm having an emotion, I better go and do something else. Like, don't put too many things on your plate, because you'll just be overwhelmed and then you'll have another emotion that you'll seek food from, right? So get familiar with the emotion first. And once you understand that and you see it coming, like you get to the point where you're like, oh, I've done this like 7 times now. I know that this is going to lead to this food. And then only at that point should you then start being like, okay, I'm going to see what else I can do to feel differently. Because if you try and do it all at once, it's just like fad diet culture, which is on Monday, do all the things, throw everything out of your pantry, buy 400 kilos of kale and just be a healthy person. It's just like, you can't fit it all in, and that's why you can't wait till it's over. So same thing here, especially with emotions. Just get familiar with the emotion before you try and intervene.
Love it. Love it. One step at a time, because some people can make all the changes at once and just totally overhaul their life, but that's not most people. So starting where you're at, starting with the awareness, just the awareness piece, and, get good with that. And then it starts to become like, I already know why I'm going to the kitchen. It's like, I'm on to you. So it'll start to unravel and unfold naturally. So thank you so much for being here. Please tell us where we can find you, where we can listen to more of you.
Yeah, sure. So I've got my own podcast, How to Not Get Sick and Die, which you can find on all the podcast apps, wherever you're listening to this one. And I've got a Busy Mums Collective, which is my Facebook group. So if you're a mum and you want to get healthy, feel free to jump in there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm so excited to have you on the show. And this was such a great combo. And I can't wait to have you back next time.
Thanks, Danny. I appreciate you getting me on.
Yeah, awesome. It was so good to talk to you, Matty. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.